I'm Jamie Klinger, and I'm here with Adam Thompson, and we're going to talk about all things Holochain, I guess.
Well, my journey was one, I suppose it goes way back, close on 19, 20 years now, when I started to actually get serious about economics as an essential part of life. And I delved into, I thought if we're going to get serious about this thing we call money and we all need to live, and I'm going to be spending the vast majority of my waking hours in the pursuit of it, I better understand what it is, where it comes from, where it goes, that sort of thing, so I can understand the system and use it to my advantage. But when I started to dig into the way that economics works, I became very dissatisfied. I discovered that the way the system was set up was more or less that in order for some people to be wealthy, other people need to be poor. And that didn't sit very well with me at all. In fact, I could never get comfortable with the idea that there wasn't enough to go around, and the wealth of some depended upon others being deprived of um, their wealth. In fact, even to the point of starvation, which we see in many parts of the world. And that was like a splinter, if you like, ticking away in my mind. And so I thought, surely there have to be alternatives. And it started me on a very long search for alternatives, which led me to mutual credit systems. And eventually, when the whole cryptocurrency thing came out, after people became disillusioned with the fiat system after 2008, really, it was that disillusionment that, oh, wow, this whole fiat system we have could actually fail. That, I think, was the linchpin required for cryptocurrencies to actually become a reality. And I then started to look at this explosion of cryptocurrencies, and I put into a search all of the various criteria that I thought an ideal currency should possess. And Holochain came up.
Hmm.
And at that time, it was before ICO. It was just a thought that had been floated in that space. And so I started to really, I liked it. I love the meta currency idea. I thought, wow, this is really the logical evolution of mutual credit. It's a plug-in for natural systems. I really loved it. And so I reached out to the team. When Arthur Brook came to Australia, I was there among the first groups of people who sat around to understand a bit more about it. And I've been sort of plugged into the project ever since.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's been really good. I've undergone a few evolutions in my thinking since then. The meta currency was an extension of what I already knew, and I started to also think a lot more about other dimensions of economics as well, which led to the creation of something I call the merit system. And well, the Holodex is another. Yeah, it's a currency exchange, which leverages slightly more traditional principles, but also is about understanding the value, or the ledger, or the value exchange that comes from currencies, and it's a currency of currencies. So it follows the Holochain philosophy of making visible those value flows. So, but the merit system is takes into account um, quite a different economic philosophy that is built also on top of the meta currency sort of value flows. I did listen to your interview on the meta currency project that you've done. So I thought, well, that was actually really good. And I guess the meta currency is something that's quite a large and new concept that it needs to be explained in a dozen different ways. And every time a new interview comes up, there's a new opportunity to understand it. Um, and it's good. I mean, one of the things that piqued my interest was that Fernandez Ibarra gave a TED talk. Um, what was it called? It was a TED talk on a life-affirming economy, and that was an inspiring talk for me. And I realize now how deeply that connects with the metacurrency project. A lot of the same philosophy permeates it. So that was quite a different angle as well. And I was also, attended Arthur Brooks' workshops on the metacurrency and currency design. And each time I hear the story told from a different perspective, I get a bit more insight into the possibilities of a new sort of currency system.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. It'll vibrates with the same ethos. So, I mean, the Holodex and the Merit system are two separate projects, but they are complementary. In fact, I realize that the reason that most mutual credit currencies and alternate currencies fail is because they lack convertibility.
Okay.
We live in a society that is deeply, deeply entrenched in a current fiat system, and to transition to something else is a very slow and difficult process. And to make that smooth transition, you really need to be able to convert one system of value to another. Hence, exchanges are very important for that. So, we realize that for the merit system to really succeed, and I would say it is true with pretty much any mutual credit currency that's out there, if it's going to scale and become all that it can be, it needs an exchange so that it can be made convertible to the prevailing and predominant currency that exists. That helps to create that bridge, if you like. So the Holodex was made to bring convertibility into the Holochain ecosystem, because here we have Holochain, a meta currency that is basically going to be a whole new is going to see the creation of a whole new raft of asset-backed mutual credit currencies. And it's something the world's never really seen before. And for them to really succeed and go where they need to go, they need to be made convertible. So Holodex is there for that. And the merit system is, it will benefit because it's something made convertible. So if you like, I can probably walk you through the Holodex. I've got a slide deck that I can share on it to help understand a lot of the concepts associated with it. You'll be the first person who's in a public forum to actually see the Holodex. A lot of people have been asking for it, and I haven't really been ready to share a white paper yet. There's still one or two elements of the Holodex that need to be nailed down. They're not technical elements; they're more around governance. So until I have them, I'm not going to say that it's the official document, but surely the design, the concepts, even some of the coding, and that is complete. And that's not going to change. So I can share that with you if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
All right, let me see if I can. Yeah, I'll share that one. All right. What have I got? Let me see if I can get a full screen view, full screen mode. You've still got a sidebar there, don't you?
A sidebar. I see you. Oh yeah, the sidebar. Yes. Yes, the
Yeah,
sidebar is
I
still.
want this slide. I want to get rid of the slide bar on the side. Um,
What program is that?
it's the Linux base. So I think that's just Ocular. But
Gotcha.
a few minutes ago, I shared it as a test run without the sidebar, and it worked fine. Anyway, we'll put up with it. You'll have to excuse the notes on the side.
Sure.
So in a nutshell, the Holodex is a fully decentralized fractal exchange that's designed to make markets and unify transactions. It's something that's never been seen before, and no decentralized exchange really comes close to the fractal nature of the Holodex, nor the capability, which really has all the capabilities of a central exchange, but is completely decentralized. And when I say completely, I mean far more decentralized than decentralized exchanges that exist today. So the Holodex itself is a module of the Dex wallet, and it's something that, you know, we'll have to make as a smartphone application, but also a PC application. So essentially, a wallet, just like, you know, your crypto wallet or whatever wallet, it's just a wallet that holds your currencies. It's yours. It lives on your own device, and it holds the keys to your castle, right? Like any other currency wallet. Now, the difference is that the Holodex as an exchange gets downloaded as a module to that wallet. So you run the Holodex from your own phone or from your own PC as a module to your wallet. So instead of taking your wallet and plugging it into an exchange somewhere else, you actually plug the exchange into your wallet, and it's your own copy of the exchange that you're running. Okay, so you're essentially running your own Holodex. And to keep things light and simple, you download the currencies that you want. Each currency is a module. If you only want to trade 2 or 3 currencies or 4 currencies, you just download those modules, and that's all that appears in your wallet. Usually there's no need to download hundreds of currencies that exist, unless you're going to trade all of those for some reason. So that's a little bit about the user interface. It has an order book, just like a centralized exchange. The Holodex is modular, in that we're jumping into some of the higher level concepts now. So each currency, as I explained before, is a module that gets downloaded and plugged in. It's its own DNA. So each currency is its own application, and it plugs in. And that essentially is just an updated entry in the order book. So at the heart of it, and we'll get a bit more into this whole thing itself, where you've got DEX, which is a transactional currency, and you've got an order matching algorithm. Now, the reason for having a transactional currency becomes really apparent, and there's a lot of power in it. And it'll become really clear. Actually, I'll give an explanation now, because the next slide won't make sense necessarily without it. Although it does go into detail later. Exchanges as they're built today rely upon currency pairing in order to trade. So you need to find a currency pair if you want to trade. Now, I think that's a really dumb idea. I think that we should be able to trade any currency with any other currency without needing to find a trading partner. So I give the example that if you've got bananas and you go to the market and you want to buy rice, you go to trade, hey, I've got bananas. Do you want to swap them for rice? And the person with the rice goes, I don't want bananas, I want apples. So then you've got to go to the Apple store and say, hey, do you want to swap bananas for apples so that I can swap for rice? And they no, I don't want bananas, I want oranges, etc. And eventually you'll find a trading partner that you have to make another trade with, and then another trade with, to go all the way back. But during this process of finding out what everybody wants, you've actually established the all of the trading partners and what they want. Everyone's put their expression of interest up, which is essentially what an order book is doing. It's saying, I have this, I want that, and this is what I want. This is what I'm willing to pay for it. Now, if everybody can express that in the form of an order book, you can automate the matching of all those orders. All that you actually need is a standard of value that everyone can agree on, just to make it simple. This is why money was invented. So instead of me swapping apples for bananas and then oranges and all the rest of it, I can say, hey, look, here's an agreed value that we can all agree upon. Let's just exchange according to that value. In society, in our society, it's cash, right? Everyone knows what a dollar's worth, and they value their commodities against that. Well, in this instance, DEX is there, and everybody values their own currency against DEX, so that we can automate the exchange of any currency to any currency, because at the end of the day, all we're doing is exchanging the value from one to the other. So by using DEX as a transactional currency and an order matching algorithm that takes all those order books and matches all the buyers and sellers, we can actually do any currency to any currency without sacrificing the usability and flexibility that comes from having an order book. And what it does is enables us to do deep aggregation of currency trades. And here's the examples that I just sort of gave you. Currency F wants to trade with currency B, but this person doesn't want that. And at the end of the day, as long as somebody wants the currency that somebody else wants to trade with, all of these trades can actually happen. In this instance, the only transaction that can't happen is B, because there's nobody who will swap currency C can't happen, because there's nobody who wants to swap currency C for anything else that's on the exchange, no matter what. So in this instance, the only currency that couldn't be exchanged, no matter how indirectly, is currency C. But as soon as somebody wants to swap currency C for any of the other traded currencies, you've got liquidity that can be leveraged against any of the other currencies. So this dramatically boosts liquidity on the exchange and enables the seamless integration of any currency to any currency sort of transactions.
Okay, so it's a little like, I mean, I was thinking it's comparable to BNB, but I mean, it's designed to skip out on the middle. So even like DEX is there, but DEX is there to facilitate you to get the currency that you want directly, instead of having to trade it into BNB and then wait and then go to trade your BNB for the thing that you actually want. So you're skipping a big step.
Exactly. DEX is like a catalyst, you say, okay, once everybody's priced what they want in DEX, and you've figured out who all the buyers and sellers are, you can make all those transactions happen without physically having to buy and sell DEX. It's like a catalyst that, you could simplify it like that to say everyone gets DEX, but the process of buying DEX and exchanging it is all automated. You don't even see it.
And so have you played it with it? Because I'm imagining, you have different people, they value things differently, right? So maybe if I'm selling my currency A and I'm valuing it at 10 DEX, but someone's valuing that same amount of currency A at, at 8 instead of 10, what happens? I mean, obviously we can't make that trade, but what does happen?
Well, you've got an order book, just like on an ordinary exchange.
Oh,
People will
okay.
say when currency A hits this amount, buy it.
Okay.
So it's still free market economics applies to set the value. In fact, that's how the spot price is set on any of the exchanges, and the Holodex is no different to that. And it's
And
actually very useful to have spot price set on the exchange, because you can then use that spot price for operating or doing currency exchanges headlessly, which we'll talk
okay, so
about later.
can you just explain what spot pricing is, please?
Oh, the spot price is the current price that's to which the currency is traded on the exchange. For
Hmm.
example, if currency A was valued at 3 DEX and the last sale of it was a few seconds ago at 3 DEX, you can say this is the current spot price
Hmm.
that people are buying and selling at three DEX. Therefore, you could offer a service to say, hey, we will exchange any currency for any currency at the spot price on the exchange, because we know that's what they're being sold for. It's the current market value that's being traded.
Hmm.
Mm.
Okay, great.
Yep. And a lot of the exchanges like Binance, they offer this sort of a service as well. Um, so one of the advantages, or one of the other features of the Holodex is that it's a fractal exchange. Yeah, not only is the Holodex an exchange with all these currencies that plug in, you can actually clone the entire, or rather, yeah, not only can you clone a module, like you can take currency B and clone it to make a template for currency D, if you liked, but the whole Holodex, the whole exchange, you can clone and create your own version to make markets. For example, um, energy markets are many markets that all have to exchange. The energy exchanges have got renewables, they've got all these market players that trade value of energy on an exchange. And often you have different exchanges in different states. So you're going to have sub exchanges for each state, and they can then all collaborate. So the idea is that if you could clone the Holodex to make a new market, for example, emissions, we want to create a market for emissions, and you have various sorts of things that would go into that. What have we got? Carbon, tree, this forestry initiative, solar panels, all of these various emissions trading schemes that can be traded. From this trade, you can then get a global view on the price of emissions. What we've created is an emissions currency that has an agreed global value. Now, you can then trade this currency as a module in the Holodex. So instead of having to buy 1,000 different emissions sort of credits from all these things, you can just buy emissions from using the emissions currency that's been created. And so what we've effectively done is we've made a new market with a currency that can be traded. And the same can be done for energy. So instead of, energy A and energy C and energy D, we actually have a global view on the value of energy that is made up of all of the aggregate of all the energy markets. And that can be traded on the Holodex it's a new asset-backed currency that can be traded. Water, intellectual property, etc.
Hmm.
So
I
yeah, we're able to make markets where there currently aren't any, and we have this problem in the world today where there's a lot of potential markets that are there. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of industry in areas that can't get any traction because it's really hard to take those ideas and get the investment that's required. But this goes some way to solving that, because we can actually start to make markets, and that creates the currency needed to fuel these industries. So
it's
it's quite an evolution, and in the future there could be dozens and dozens of of asset-backed exchanges that all plug into the Holodex to give us a universally convertible, universal conversion among any currencies. Okay, so this is just another view of what we were talking about. There's currency, carbon, or the global cost of carbon, and here are all the various emissions trading schemes and various ways in which people set their price for carbon. And as a result, you then have a global view on the cost of carbon, which is represented in this currency, which then gets traded as a module in the Holodex proper. So it's something that's possible now because in a recent release of Holochain, they've now enabled the ability to clone whole DNAs, which is what this feature actually relied upon. Now, the other cool feature of the Holodex, if you like, is that because we don't rely upon trading pairs, we can trade any currency to any currency. I envisage that most people who use the Holodex will operate it headlessly, which means that they won't actually log into the exchange and fill out the order book and everything to trade. What they'll do is they'll simply rely upon the spot price on the exchange to do a currency conversion. So, for example, someone's got a stall. Say Sally has a stall, and you want to purchase something. So Sally has the Holodex app on her own in her phone. So do you. Sally wants US dollars. She's not interested in any other currency. She wants to be paid in US dollars. You've got a Holoport and you've earned some Holo hosting credits. No problem. You can pay. You just select, I want to pay using Holo Fuel, and the Holodex will instantly do the conversion and she'll receive US dollars. So it will function just like a Visa settlement layer. Nobody had to log into Holodex as such. They just needed to have an account. And because they're both using the wallet, which the Holodex is part of, we can do that instant currency conversion and settlement for that transaction. It was a simple, seamless process, and I think most people will use it that way. It's just the ability to instantly convert one currency to another will be very, very useful.
So that's a good example, and I'm glad you chose USD and Holofuel because that one works perfectly. I can imagine that some of the currencies are going to be a little more out there potentially. A fractal of an energy market or something like that. And I'm trying to trade that for USD in this kind of way. And maybe that doesn't have the same kind of liquidity. Maybe there's not as much interest in it. I imagine I'll come up against roadblocks trying to trade for that if I'm not connected directly to the exchange, right?
Well, if it's traded on the Holodex proper,
Okay.
it's those fractals don't get traded. They are exchanges that have their own market, and then that currency that emerges from the market gets traded on the Holodex. So at that stage, there's usually a fair bit of liquidity in them. And at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be energy to US dollars liquidity. It can be energy to anything else that's traded liquidity, as long as both US dollars has liquidity and energy has liquidity. The exchange will happen instantly. If there's no liquidity, there might be a delay.
Okay, and you were saying, so if it's if it's the fractal, then it's not directly on the Holodex exchange. It's layered underneath it, and so it's not
It
Yeah, it
won't
would
be
have to be
it
with,
won't be
yeah, okay.
available at the Holodex. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I, so I was thinking about the way that it was shown before. And so you had, soul, like it was broken to solar, coal, and all these things.
Mm.
And so those are their own exchange. Is that
Mm.
correct? This
Yep.
is, yeah, that's the emissions trading marketplace. Um, but they wouldn't be, they could, like, could they be shown as something on the holodeck proper, or
Yeah, I mean, in some ways they could, but it makes a lot more sense for them to have their own market so that you can form a global price. I mean, in this instance, it's carbon, but let's say it was energy, and these were all different forms of producing energy. And somebody has solar panels on their roof, for example, and they've got energy credits as a result. Um, they would be able to they would be able to trade that for the universal value of energy via
okay.
the energy exchange, and they would pay using energy. Yes, it's their solar panel, which is a fractal, but it's converted to the global price of energy, which is traded on the holodex, which is, I think, is over here as a module somewhere. I know it's not, but yeah, it would be. So at the end of the day, it's still, yes, my solar panels are tradable because even the fractal is a fractal of a currency that is traded on the holodex.
So now let's say that I'm someone on the Holodex currency marketplace, and I have an interest in the environment, and I want to support solar carbon credits above all other carbon credits. Is that something that I can do?
Well, the the carbon currency is rather agnostic. It's just a representative of the aggregate value of carbon, or the
Mhm.
economy of carbon. Um, but you could do that on the exchange itself simply by deciding to, transact in those things that you want the value from.
Okay, so I would go ahead and buy the carbon credits, then go onto the emissions trading marketplace, and then boost up the value of the solar credits to incentivize more people to, create solar carbon credits, for example, if that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, if that's what you wanted to do. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, there's lots of ways to do it. I mean, in this instance, carbon as it is a transactional currency. It just represents the value of the whole emissions trading ecosystem.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that what I would suggested was, a good thing to necessarily do. I just wanted to know if I could do it.
yeah. You'd have to go into that, where it's actually traded actively, and have influence there, or even better, we all produce emissions of some sort or another. There might even be one way to trade some values in that. So
Hmm.
the rest of it's a more of a deeper dive into the technical breakdown of how things work, and the way in which currencies you don't actually trade one currency for another. You're just trading the value, and currencies don't leave. We're not actually going across chain at all. All
Hmm.
currencies stay on their own chain as they have to, but the value is anyway. It's a bit of a concept in there. The value is traded, and for all intents and purposes, you've exchanged currency A for currency B. That's how it appears in your wallet, but in reality, that's just not what happens. Um, it talks a bit about the ledger. This one here is interesting because we can clone modules in the Holodex. Each currency is a module. So, for example, if we intend to create on purpose a template, and here it is here, DEX token B, which is a template. You would clone it, you would change some parameters in there and hit save, and that will create its own DNA. right? So by simply filling out the form and creating the necessary parameters, you've created a new currency or a new token, if you like. So it's that simple, 1,000 times simpler than the way it is um, with existing currencies. And there's sort of a view of it, token there. So you could even create a token, and then once that token reaches its maturity and it's ready to be converted into its underlying asset or the currency, again, could be as easy as a few clicks on the button, and we can actually do the conversion. All right. So it's an easy process. Um, so
So,
you can well foresee a whole new currency ecosystem springs up off the back. Of course, whether people want to buy these tokens and all the rest will depend upon whether they see value in the underlying utility or asset that the token actually represents.
mhm.
And yeah, and naturally enough, the currency model will need to show those value flows are real, and then once people can see via the token demonstration that, wow, there's some real good value flows in this, and there's therefore value is possible to emerge from it, people are likely to invest in it and use the currency when it becomes a reality. Yeah.
So how would we
Um,
go about attaching the USD, for example, or
Well, that's one of the easy ones. Yeah, blockchain is hard, but something like USD or fiat is very, very easy because you're going from one ledger, which is held by the bank, to another ledger, which is just a holochain DHT. So that's really simple. What it does require us to do is to, for this USD module, has to trust the bank's ledger. It's as simple as that. And the bank has to trust the USD DHT, that the distributed hash table, the ledger in there. Once that trust relationship's there, it's simple as one ledger to another, double entry bookkeeping, and away you go. That's really easy. Blockchains are harder because we have a trusted oracle um, issue when it comes to blockchain smart contracts. But we think we've found a very elegant way to solve the trusted oracle problem in Holochain, because we can set up syndicates to validate transactions and multi-sig wallets in the blockchain smart contract. It's quite robust, certainly a lot better than what I've seen with existing trusted oracle solutions.
Mhm.
Um, we talked a bit about fiat gateways and blockchain gateways. At the end of the day, it's just about setting up those trust relationships, and some of this. Anyway, various hosting options we planned there. At the end of the day, the Holodex is in your own wallet. You power your own transaction. So in theory, you are providing the compute, the internet, everything required for your own transaction. The cost of that transaction is going to be minuscule because you're already providing all the utility. However, if you don't want to host your own transaction for whatever reason, there's a very good option there to say, look, I'm going to outsource this to Holo hosting. Maybe your order book, you don't want to have your computer running all day while you're waiting for your order book order to go through. So you might outsource that to Holo hosting, where people will host it 24/7 very reliably, and you can be sure your orders will be fulfilled when they hit the milestones or their thresholds. And we'll even play with an option where you might be rewarded for for hosting for others. Holo hosting is ideal because it also provides a web interface where people could come in and host. But if you don't care about web interfaces, then the possibilities there is you can provide a hosting service for others and take a clip of the transaction fee for doing that. So there's options there for providing the hosting services. I think naturally the most appealing one is that people can power their own transactions, which is totally, totally decentralized.
And so, okay, so if you've solved the banking problem, you solved the blockchain issue with the Oracle. So is this to say that, as things progress, the holodeck could have options to send, Bitcoin from the holodeck wallet to another Bitcoin wallet and Ethereum to another Ethereum wallet and cash to a bank account?
Uh, yes.
Okay.
Now, in order for the Holodex to work properly with either fiat or blockchain currencies, we need to convert those. For example, when somebody wants to, let's say, Bitcoin, if you want to trade Bitcoin on the Holodex, you actually need to convert it from the blockchain Bitcoin to a Holodex version of Bitcoin. And then that Bitcoin could be used anywhere throughout the Holochain ecosystem because it's native Holochain currency at that point, at a fraction of the cost that current Bitcoin. You take all of the constraints off blockchain. A Holochain has no transaction limits and this and that. As such, it just operates on totally different principles. So what we're doing when we convert the blockchain version of Bitcoin or Ethereum into the Holochain version one, we're locking it in the smart contract in Bitcoin and creating the avatar of it here in the Holochain. It can be traded, and when you want to go back to the blockchain version of Bitcoin, you can. It goes and it unlocks it, and away we go.
Okay.
Um, So the potential's there to use some other cool Holochain smart things to um, aggregate blockchain trades and stuff, but those are value adds that might come some point down the track if we really want to. But I'm of the opinion that when people realize how much more efficient the Holochain version of things are, they'll probably opt not to go back to the blockchain version.
Well, sure. I mean, if you can get all of the other currencies that you want on, here for a fraction of the exchange costs, it's a no-brainer to keep it here.
Yep. Yeah, and the utility, any Holochain lends itself to meta currency and cross-chain sort of things are all native. We can bridge applications and we can bridge currencies into applications. All of these sort of dynamic things that are native to Holochain, you can't do in blockchains. They're extremely difficult to do in blockchain. So I think once the utility of having these things on Holochain is realized, most people will opt not to go back. And eventually there'll be less and less currency available on blockchain, and it'll be all the action will be on Holochain. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think about all of the different currencies that exist, in the current web, as far as, thinking about YouTube, you can send, a certain amount of dollars to somebody on a live stream, and Twitch has stars, I think, and Facebook has some kind of other something or other, and they all have their own like little something, and they take a massive cut. They take a massive cut every time that, if you send $10, they take, $1 or $2 out of that and put it in their own pocket, and then give, $8 to the creator, um, for nothing, for
mm,
doing nothing.
mm,
Um, so it's, if we had the capacity to do this, I'm just like, in any application that anyone builds on Holochain, to add DEX into it is, is what, a few hours of coding, like, if that, I imagine
exactly.
it's wild, absolutely wild, the capacity and the possibilities. um that's wonderful, really great stuff,
Yeah.
really impressive.
And I mean, once the value of these currencies is set and recognized, because the exchange is making markets, it's setting values. You can start using applications like HoloREA, and the REA then to exchange other forms of value against it. um, yeah, all these sort of possibilities open up. So yeah, all of this is, this is getting more into the administrative part, which still needs to be nailed down properly. But the broad principles, the holodex itself, as a it's an exchange that's owned by the people for the people, but we like to make sure that there's some guiding principles in there around its governance and ongoing function. And the number one, it's been created to enrich the masses of humanity. What we're endeavoring to do here is to create wealth rather than extract wealth. And um, we have these sort of principles that every endeavor of the Holodex Foundation and its agencies and institutions must contribute to the common good. That's what it's for. And its foundation, the Holodex Foundation, is founded on the principle that collective prosperity can be advanced through justice, generosity, collaboration, and mutual assistance. And therefore, we universally apply these principles. Now, what that means, or which we'll see in a later slide, is that, and it lends to the fourth principle, that when we're talking about justice here, we have to constrain our own self-interest. I got scared when I realized the enormity of what the holodex could be. And even at a 0.001% sort of transaction fee, which I think is very low, but quite doable, the wealth that could flow into the foundation is still staggering when you consider this could be the future of forex markets and all sorts of global visa replacement for visa, and let alone just the crypto market. It could be staggering, and I got so that this is wealth that no individual or even an organization should have, but rather it should be subject to the constraints of principles in a constitution, that constrains the sort of self-interest that inevitably arises when you centralize things. And so we have this sort of model and proposal, and that 85% of all of the wealth goes back to funding projects that will create new currencies and new asset-backed currencies that can then be traded on the exchange, on the proviso that they also contribute using the same principles, and their wealth generated goes on to generate further wealth, that in turn its children generate wealth and its children's children, and we have this massive wealth effect that comes out of it. There's a bit of a war chest for the protection of legals and whatever might happen to be there, and also the maintenance of the exchange. Someone's got to look after it and foster the development of coding, and of that 5%, which we hope those who help to found and fund and get the thing off the ground, we can reward them.
Beautiful.
So yeah, so that's in a nutshell Holodex, which has got a number of quite new and novel features that don't exist in any exchange today, be it crypto or fiat.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. That was remarkable. Very exciting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's I'm hoping that in the not too distant future, we've got a few projects that in the pipeline that will help to build the holodex. So it's not something that we're building as a standalone thing, but rather the modules that we're building for a number of these other projects will be some of the same modules used in the holodex. And the features of the holodex are, these exchanges are something that's valuable for a number of other projects. So we'll build them in collaboration with a few other projects that are in the pipeline at the moment.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic and really exciting. I'm I'm a very critical person, especially of everything to do with crypto. So I'm impressed that I'm very impressed. I would have expected to be poking a lot more holes than I was, and yeah, you really hit it out of the park. I'm really impressed. Really beautiful stuff.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts gone into it over the years. I mean, it started. David Atkinson originally came to me not long after the ICO and asked, "Hey, how about building an exchange for us?" sort of thing. It's not an official Holochain like team project, but it was saying we recognise there's a need for it, and yeah, how about you have a think about it? And so I did, and that's what I came up with.
Who are
Um,
you working with? Who is your team for building and thinking and coding?
Um, well, I did most of the thinking, although I bounced the concepts off Gillam before he
Oh,
went to
cool.
work in Lightning Rod Labs, just to make sure that from a holochain perspective, the concepts in there were actually achievable.
Hmm.
Yeah, you'll notice in there that the transactions being all peer to peer meant that we were going to have to do a lot of parallel computing as groups of people whose order books all matched would have to come together and those transactions would all have to take place. Um, we go, well, that's all happening in real time. It's not linear. Um, and so, yep, thumbs up. Holochain's very good at parallel compute, and those aren't any problem, which is really cool. And validating the trusted oracle things we need to validate the blockchain smart contracts and vice versa. The solutions we've put forward for them are all quite achievable. So yeah, the technical review was important, but yeah, the rest of it's mostly been mine, and I had some legal input from um, Colin Gamble, who's a lawyer who's involved in another US exchange, and that was useful in terms of what to watch out for from a legal perspective. And we still haven't landed on all of the legal hurdles that will likely to pop up. But I'm working with Stephen Alexander on a new model of DAO, and so we can create smart legal contracts, which again is going to be something quite new that the blockchain world has not really come to yet. Although it's quickly realizing that it needs to operate in a legal space because regulators are clamping down on it quickly.
Yeah, especially with what just happened with FTX.
Yeah.
That was
So
something.
yeah, so that's still evolving, but there is a project that we're working with Stephen Alexander that will help to bring a proper legal framework for this, and then we can operate in a DAO space, which is, in my opinion, better than a foundation that operates in Switzerland or one of these crypto-friendly zones. Um, it's it's a legal DAO.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I have no idea about the legalities around DAOs, but that sounds good.
At the
If it
moment, they're
works.
very sketchy, and it relies upon the fact that there's nothing to sue and nothing to govern. But that's a fiction that's quickly being unravelled, and it needs a proper legal wrapper, which is in the works.
Okay,
Hmm.
cool. So this is a to be a white paper, or part of a white paper.
Yeah, there's still some elements in there I'd like to lock down, like the DAO, and there's a few things that are going to be a few months in development. But the technical elements of how it will function and all the rest of it, it's feature complete. We put it that way. But
You mean
yeah,
like once you have it rolled out, it's should be self-sustaining?
no, meaning that the actual technical details of how it functions and the operating principles are complete and they've been validated and they're not going to change.
Oh,
The only
okay.
thing stopping us is the governance and legal framework that still needs to be put in place before we can say, "Hey, this is what it is, and this is how you can support it." Until we put a legal framework in there to protect people's investments, I don't
Hmm.
want to take people's investments.
Yeah, no, that's very fair.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Have you seen the video line goes up? Have you watched that one?
No.
Oh, it's I mean it was a massive slam against like NFTs. Yeah, it was huge. It's been seen a whole bunch of times. So it's really wonderful. Does a really good job of explaining a lot of things. I mean, things you already know the majority of. This is really just anyways, one of the things that he mentioned, the only reason I mention it, when talking about DAOs specifically, is that currently there's no, there's no reason that DAOs need to exist. Um, there's nothing that a DAO could do better. Like no DAOs currently exist that are doing something better than just an organization could do. And at the
Mm.
same time, at the end of the day, there's going to be a person who's making a decision, who's holding power, who's so the like if that person can be manipulated, if that person can be hacked, if that person you know can be compromised in some way, it's going to come to the same the same problems are going to arise if it's a closed
Yeah.
organization or if it's a decentralized one.
This is where I really like what Eric's doing with the How project,
Mm.
which is a properly decentralized, autonomous or semi-autonomous DAO. Really, it works really well, and I'd like to integrate that sort of thinking into the Holodex Foundation, um, because I like the idea that everybody can be involved in the decision-making process. We still have the Constitution, which is a set of guiding principles that we are inviolate. And I think that's needed for any good organizational structure because it's not about personalities or people, it's about people working with principle. And if you don't like the principles, then find another project, sort of thing, or form a DAO that whose job is to improve principles or create principles that do become more acceptable, or something like that. But it's an approach that I'm watching very carefully, and I think could be a very good complement for what we're doing. Mm.
I saw a little bit. I mean, he also presented a little bit in person at the camp that I was at, that he was at as well. Where was there there was a recent video with the How, is that correct? With David Atkinson or no?
There was. He gave me a quick demo of it on one of our earlier Zooms, and I go, "Oh, I see what you're doing," and it's
Okay.
very clever. I like it, and I describe it as a a semi-autonomous DAO, because it's more than a DAO, and it allows for sub branches of decision making and etc. A more natural way in which people can break problems down to arrive at larger conclusions and decisions, as you would expect in complex society. So it's I like it.
Cool. Yeah, I have to get more into that as well. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, we're running out of meeting time, but also it is a bit late, and this is quite a bit of brain juice to be flowing at this
Yeah,
time.
let that swirl around in your head before we jump into the merit system, which is a completely different reconceptualization of economics, but I think gets to the heart of what economics actually is. What we have at the moment is a man-made fiction, whereas the merit system is based in human reality, and I think will stand or has it's a reality that's been here forever, and we just haven't realized it yet. It's kind of like the oneness of humanity, that we're all you know members of the human race. It's been true forever, but it's only in recent times that we've had a consciousness that it is in fact the case.
Hmm.
So it's one of those sorts of realizations. Mm. But for another time.
For another time. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very
Uh,
much for the opportunity to chat about it.
yeah, this has been great. Thank you.